Alright guys, welcome back, and in this video we're going to be fixing a few problems with the game. The first one is, right now, check out this first meatball whenever I run the game. It falls right through the ground. Not good. Even though it has physics applied to it, our game doesn't know yet that this brown stuff in this little grass right here is the ground. Even though we can see it as human beings and realize we needed to tell Construct 2 that it needs to treat this area as the ground. Now, before I do that, I want to mention this. Right now, of course, whenever we play the game, the camera follows the meatball whenever we fire it. And this is really good for the final game, but just for developing it and making sure that we see everything, I actually like to take this entire window and I like to see everything at once. So, I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. If you click New Project right here, actually, I forgot what the size of my layout was. Alright, so go ahead and copy your layout size. And then in your projects panel right here, click a new project. And I'm going to make my window size the same size as my layout size. Now whenever I do this, you guys can see that my entire window is now pretty much that. So it's a little bit different than if you were to play Angry Birds or something, but this is really useful whenever you're just developing your game and you don't want to keep looking back and forth with your camera. So that's how I'm going to develop this game from here on out. But just remember, whenever you export your final game, to go back and actually change your window size. So right now, I'll make sure to go back in the layers panel and have that game selected. And now another issue I want to take care of is this. Of course, now we can work on the issue with the meatball going through the ground. Obviously, we don't want that to happen. We want it to pretty much roll across the ground. So, in order to do this, take this sprite right here, and hopefully you named it square, or it is named square already, and drag it down the bottom right here. And the size, the height really doesn't matter that much, but what you can do is you can just resize it to something like 1500, because remember, that's how wide our game is. Let me scroll out a little bit so you guys can see. So make sure you have it exactly 1500 wide, and it could be just 100 tall or whatever. So now, if we scroll in, and I just accidentally hit Alt on my keyboard, so alright, want to make sure it didn't mess up my screen recorder at all. And position this exactly right there. Maybe even. Alright. So pretty much position it right where the ground is, and since it just looks annoying right here, I'm also going to change the opacity of it from 100 to 50. Although that's not really going to matter. And also another thing I want to point out is I'm just changing the opacity so it's a little bit easier to work with it right now. Opacity means transparency, of course. Oh, I don't know why I said that. You guys know that. And whenever you export your final game, make sure that you have the opacity at 0 for this, meaning that it's there, but no one can see it. So right now, again, just go ahead and put it at 50, and that allows us to work with it easy, but still see the ground in the background. And actually what I can do is change the name from this to ground, and that way we can be whenever we're adding physics to it or behaviors to it later on, it's easier to see our objects if they're named properly. So right now we put the square at the ground, but we didn't say to treat it as a physics object yet, so other things like the meatballs and the cannon and the tower interact with it. So in order to do this, make sure you have it selected and add a physics behavior. And whenever we do this, the meatball can now roll across it. It will treat it as a solid object basically. Now, before we just start firing stuff into it, I want to add a couple other properties to it. So the first thing I want to do is there's a property called immovable, and I just want to go ahead and set this equal to yes. And as you can see, it goes enable to make object have infinite mass, ideally for scenery. So basically, it allows things to work properly whenever you're using them in the background scene. And another thing I want to do is prevent rotation. So prevent the object rotating when hit. Now, the reason I selected that is because we don't want, even though this is treated like a real life object right now, we don't want it to interact with really anything. So whenever we hit these blocks right here, they're going to tumble around, they're going to move. However, whenever we hit this ground with a meatball, we don't want it to rotate or move around or bump around at all. So that's why we pretty much need to make it immovable and prevent rotation, and that takes care of all of that. So now it covers the area that we want, opacity is at 50, and now whenever I shoot the meatball, you see the first one just dropped and landed there, which means it's working awesome. And check that out. Pretty freaking sweet. So we can either just shoot this first one or the second one. And all of the physics are built right into Construct 2, which makes this incredibly awesome and efficient. One of the reasons I love working with these making softwares and engines rather than coding everything by scratch, because coding like all the laws of physics by scratch and gravity and how things react take a crap load of time. So anyways, we got our ground working, we got our meatballs behaving, sweet. So well, that's it for this tutorial, I think. So thank you guys for watching, and well, see you next time.